name is Kevin Yates. For those who don't know me, I'm a customer success manager at, thank you, my fans out there. And I'm introducing our next speaker for this session, who's from Delos. The session is called, it's not up here, Strategies and Best Practices for Insuring Niche and Catastrophic Risks. So you guys are in for a real treat with Kevin here. For some background on Delos, they're relatively new to insurance now. They just went live this past year. They're an MGA providing home insurance in California, and their focus is on high fire risk areas. They're really at the forefront of transforming property insurance in climate-affected regions. They were born by a group of smart people that embarked on a groundbreaking approach of integrating climate and catastrophe modeling expertise at every level of an insurance provider. These models have consistently outperformed industry standards, and they've allowed Delos to underwrite policies profitably in areas where legacy carriers are either avoiding altogether or quickly pulling out of. Our speaker for today is CEO of Delos. It's Kevin Stein. Kevin is an insurtech entrepreneur with aerospace background, brings innovative solutions to wildfire modeling. He has a degree in aeronautics, astronautics, and mechanical engineering, and he leans on that background to help continue to develop the model. So please welcome to the stage, Kevin Stein.
Thank you, sir. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. I know it's the last session of the day before we get to go to the Cowboy Neon Party. I was just informed that this is not just a cowboy party, it's a neon party. I'm from California. I do not understand any of this, so it's going to be absolutely fascinating. I did get some boots while I was in Nashville, though. American Airlines lost my bag, which is a blessing in disguise because now I got these sweet boots. So you'll see me neon dancing. I don't know. I'm not from this part of the country. Anyway, we're here to talk about how us in the insurance industry can successfully profitably cover niche and catastrophe risks in a world that's getting a lot more complicated. Before I start, I've been asked by Guidewire to remind everybody that all sessions are covered under the safe harbor statement, just in case we get questions that reference forward-looking content shared in other connection sessions. I don't know what that means, so I'll probably violate it, hopefully. It's probably why they put a legal disclaimer on my talk. As Kevin mentioned, thank you for that, I'm CEO of Delos Insurance. Delos Insurance is a specialist. We write home insurance in wildfire areas. We have wildfire science professors on our team, built the firefighting department's model, the U.S. Forest Service model, and with them, we've built models into all levels of our company, from underwriting pricing up through portfolio management and PML. That's really the only way to successfully and profitably understand wildfire risk, and therefore write it profitably in today's climate-affected world. We also happen to be an Insurance Now customer. But we are not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about industry-wide. How are we able to successfully understand these types of risks? Risks that are changing, risks that are more complicated. Throughout the talk, I'll sort of describe different ways and different approaches that we can all take that are a little bit different than the ways in which we've been approaching traditional perils. In order to break all this down, we need to start with how the world is changing. There are two very important world trends that impact how we look at specialty risks. First of all, the world's getting more complicated. In the last 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, I don't know how long COVID's been around. It feels like an eternity, honestly. But for that number of years, we've been experiencing not just a worldwide pandemic, but worldwide inflation. A significant increase in cyber crimes recently. Last couple of years, we have two wars that really are including or impacting the entirety of the world. We have social inflation. We have catastrophes that have been changing, that have been getting more destructive. Some of the numbers are shocking. In the last 6 years, California has experienced 8 out of its 10 largest wildfires. In the last 20 years, the U.S. has experienced 14 out of its most costly 15 hurricanes. Catastrophes are just a lot worse than they used to be. Looking at it differently, between 1980 and 2022, the world saw an average of $8.1 billion loss events. In 2020 to 2022, the world has seen an average of $18 billion loss events. Things have gotten significantly more complicated, and risks have become more difficult to understand and a lot worse. Trend number 2, data is eating the world. I'm going to be a Silicon Valley startup bro just for 1 second. I'm from the Silicon Valley, born and raised, been in startups for 20 years now. Previously, we were going through a VC, a startup trend, a movement known as software is eating the world. The internet is eating the world. During that time, we saw most industries move to an online sales experience. Not all industries. We believed it was going to be all. Turns out it was most. But there was a revolutionization on how to purchase things. Back-end software also changed. It's very obviously important being here at a Guidewire conference to talk about how corporate software has changed. Digitization across all industries really changed the ways in which companies work. They became more efficient. What we're experiencing now is a trend called data is eating the world. There's a significantly larger amount of data that has been generated across the world, and different groups use this in different ways. Ways in which they can create some sort of alpha. They can improve somebody's understanding of a specific asset class, of a specific thing. Sometimes it's data feeds, sometimes it's specialists creating last mile solutions for things that are more difficult to understand. Forbes said it best, at risk of reading a slide. I'm going to read a slide. Data and the ability to make sense of it has been one of the greatest drivers of innovation in both business and society in recent decades, and a primary driver of economic success in the 21st century. This change has impacted many different economies, from manufacturing to digital health. Advertising is a great example. We've all experienced going online and experiencing targeted ads. People trying to sell us specific things that they think we would be interested in buying. Some solutions, of course, are better than others. I bought a couch recently, and for weeks afterwards, I got advertisements to buy a couch, but I already bought a couch. I didn't need a couch. But we all sort of experience that in our daily lives. As an advertiser, you can use your dollars more efficiently. You can make sure that your ads are just getting in front of your most likely customers, increasing your ROI on your advertising budget. This also applies to the insurance industry. As I mentioned, it can be some companies have created data feeds to make more traditional underwriting factors higher resolution, more accurate. And there's also been groups that have used this data to create last mile solutions for very specific types of risk. So here's 2 examples I'll quickly go through. I swear this is the last slide I'm going to read, so just give me 1 second to do it. McKinsey here states that commercial insurance specialists have displayed improved underwriting profitability and premium growth versus diversified commercial and large risk-focused carriers. Both premium growth and underwriting profit, that's key. We will revisit that in a second. Corvus, congratulations to them, by the way, if everybody saw that news. Corvus here talking about what they know best, cyber insurance. Cyber risks are evolving beyond the confines of traditional underwriting techniques, and the industry must embrace a new approach that involves proactive, ongoing risk assessment. So what both of these quotes are saying, that is in light of an increased amount of data, there are specialty groups that are better able to utilize that data to understand very specific types of risks. Okay, so we've gone through how the world's a lot more complicated, a lot more destructive. We've discussed how there's a lot more data available, and we've started to get into how sometimes that can be used to augment sort of a standard underwriting procedure, and sometimes that can be used for specialists to understand specific risks better. So at risk of insulting the intelligence of everybody in the audience, I'm going to start with the basics about how carriers underwrite specific lines of business. This will be very simple, but this will help sort of clarify the entire rest of the talk. So the first way in which carriers underwrite any sort of line of business is put it through their regular flow of business. Generally, this involves your room of underwriters. Those room of underwriters use data to understand the level of risk of specific policies or requests for quotes that come across their desk. As it relates to homeowners, underwriters will look at age of a home, age of a roof, amount of loss history, number of losses submitted in the last 5 years. They will use that data to understand how risky is this home. There are specific types of data feeds that have allowed that to be more accurate. It's very useful. For other types of perils, for example, wildfire or hurricane as it relates to home insurance, these group of underwriters will generally use a third-party data model to understand what is the risk of that specific home or commercial property. Sometimes carriers will make that in-house. For more difficult perils, more difficult to understand, more complicated perils, it can be cost prohibitive to try to create models in-house that can accurately understand what is the true level of risk. Sometimes it's not worth it. You don't get the results, the underwriting profit that you're really looking for. However, sometimes it actually is worth it. There's been a trend recently among large home insurance carriers to create attritional loss models. That's where you really take as many data feeds as possible and train that on incurred loss, attritional loss, non-catastrophic loss. And those models have actually been very accurate. They've driven a lot of different groups to a much more profitable loss ratio. The next way that insurance companies can participate in a sector is to not participate in a sector. Obviously, every insurance company has their business plan, certain areas that they just don't focus on, so they're not going to write those lines of business. But there are others where insurance companies have tried to make Category 1 fit, tried to make it work, and have realized that, no, the losses incurred are not worth the revenue potential of that sector, and simply have decided to leave that sector. This was true with cyber. That used to be a part of general liability until insurance companies realized, hey, I cannot understand the constant war between hackers and security personnel. I'm simply going to decide to not underwrite this peril. And it's happened with catastrophe as well. Generally, these are the two ways in which insurance companies will approach specific perils, specific lines of business. But there is a third approach that can result in pretty significant underwriting profit and rapid growth. And that is to partner or create in-house a specialty group. I mentioned creating something in-house because many different insurance companies and reinsurance companies have decided to create a specific group that will focus on a direct line of business. This, of course, is different than simply getting an underwriting feed, data feed, and using your standard team of underwriters to write that peril. Conventional wisdom generally indicates that it's very difficult for an insurance company to move profitability and revenue in the same direction quickly. Well, if you want them to go up, I suppose. You can generally take your portfolio, look at the unprofitable portion of it, cut that off. Your revenue suffers, your portfolio shrinks, but your profitability increases. If you want to grow your portfolio size and you want good risks, the way you generally do it is you put a bunch of money into customer acquisition to go out and get those high-quality risks. For the time in which you are putting that money into customer acquisition, your combined ratio will suffer, your profitability will suffer, but your revenue will increase. Working with a specialty group can create the ability to have rapid growth and underwriting profit all at the same time. These groups really focus on an area that they understand very well. They have data and underwriting advantage over other groups. And through that, they can identify a profitable subsegment that others have not identified. So they can write at competitive rates for business that they know is profitable, resulting in rapid growth and profitable growth. So we've talked about the two different ways that an underwriter can look at a specific peril. They can use data to be able to underwrite it more accurately in their normal flow of business, or they can partner with a specialist. It seems as if that there's something innately different of these perils, specific perils that fit a specialist peril versus a generalist peril. So let's talk about what sets a peril up to be better for a specialist. There's 4 characteristics that we're going to go through. First of all, characteristic 1, a peril is extremely complex. To look at the hurricane sector very quickly, here's some data that talks about how this peril has gotten more complex recently. There's been a 300% increase in yearly rapid intensification hurricane events as 30 years ago. For those of you that are not familiar, rapid intensification is a specific behavior of hurricanes where they can go from a tropical storm to a high-level category very quickly. That happens a lot more than it used to. It's getting more complicated. Characteristic 2, you need deep expertise. Looking at an example from the flood space, there are 7 methodologies for flood modeling. Different methodologies are more effective in different situations. Sometimes you need a combination of some of these methodologies to most accurately understand risk of flood. I don't know what that is. Most people don't know what that is. Generally going to look at somebody that has devoted their life, a scientist maybe, to understanding flood, to be able to really deeply understand what methodology to use in what situation. Looking at wildfire, a sector I understand a lot better, 50% of the last 6 fire seasons has had a new type of fire behavior. The third behavior is that it's changing very rapidly. The third characteristic is it's changing very rapidly. It's very difficult to fit that into standard actuarial techniques. Generally, you'll be looking at many years of loss history as a way of predicting the losses of the next year. But if a peril is changing this quickly, that sort of methodology doesn't work nearly as well. And number 4, you need specialty data. This one absolutely shocked me when I learned about this. There are 1 million pieces of malware made every single day. That is terrifying. Just, being on my computer, trying to run a company especially, absolutely terrifying. But clearly you need specialty data to understand what type of malware you need to look out for. So these 4 characteristics really illustrate what types of perils just don't work in your standard underwriting process. Okay, so now that we know these 4 characteristics, let's talk a little bit more about specifics to illustrate what we're really talking about. What do specialty underwriters actually look like? Well, they can be many different business structures. They can be an MGA. For example, Delos is an MGA. You have, flood groups, hurricane groups with Orchid, Rethought for flood. You have your cyber groups, Cowbell, Coalition, Corvus, At Bay. They can be insurance companies. Palomar and Kinsale have been doing extremely well over the last couple of years. Despite the fact that everything is getting more complicated, they are succeeding. Or it can be a specialty program. I've actually seen a number of different reinsurers have started specific commercial type programs in-house, like specialty workers' comp for a specific type of employment. For that, if you have people that really deeply understand that area, you can write that profitably. Generally, it's done as an in-house full program administrator, though. It's not done as a specific data feed. The perils that set up better for specialists, you got your catastrophes, your wildfire, flood, hurricane, earthquake. We've talked a lot about cyber. Cannabis, showed up on the scene as a specific type of risk recently, and you had specialists really try to dive into the details, understand that sector. The world is changing with autonomous vehicles, autonomous trucking. I got coffee down here trying to make sense of that for the autonomous trucking for all of us. You got specialty commercial. I just tossed up on the slide some examples. You got your industrial, your hospitals, your auto body shops. All of those have very specific risks associated with it that you don't know if you're not really deep in that sector. And at the bottom, we have our companies. You recognize, I'm sure you recognize a lot of these different companies. They are a pretty big, growing part of the insurance industry. Actually, you're going to see a lot of them around today and tomorrow because many of them are Insurance Now customers as well. Okay, so now we understand what specialty underwriters look like. We understand what perils are set up really well to be able to work with specialty underwriters as opposed to being done in-house or done, your standard underwriting techniques. So at this point, let's dive into the specific types of partnerships that carriers can have with these specialty underwriters. A lot of carriers think, and maybe many of you in the audience, if you are a carrier, you're thinking, my company doesn't really work with outside groups. That's not our business plan. That's not the way we do business. It's the way we've never done it before. Many carriers believe that these specialty groups are competitors. But I'm here to say that that's really just not true. Partnering, even though it may require a different sort of business arrangement than most carriers are used to, partnering can actually accomplish some growth for a carrier. Even though you're offloading a portion of a segment to a different group, you, in the target segments that you're still in, can actually grow and take on more market share by partnering with these groups. So I'm going to break down 4 different ways in which specifically you can partner to be able to, and use some examples to be able to illustrate what I'm talking about. I'm going to be using the example of California homeowners and ways that carriers can partner with specialists. I'm not trying to tell everybody the best way to partner with Delos. This may happen to be the best way to partner with Delos, but I'm doing it because I understand this sector better than other sectors, and I want to make sure to stay within the realm that I understand. Okay. The first partnership structure is pure distribution. Before getting into the example, let me describe what's happening here on the screen. You generally have a specialty program. A panel of reinsurance companies, I have 2 up here, could be many, could be 1. A panel of reinsurers that are backing up a carrier, and that carrier works as a specialty underwriter. This structure example is an MGA. Obviously, the carrier and specialty underwriter could be one and the same. It could be a specialty insurer, but the structure still holds. That program is getting distributed by you, who is the California home insurance carrier, and therefore the policies go to the customer. So in this situation, say that you've been writing homeowners in California for decades, centuries. Wildfire's gotten a lot more difficult to understand in the last 6 years or so, since 2017, Tubbs and Thomas fire. You've taken on a lot of losses. You've decided, hey, you know what? I don't understand this risk. I'm a good risk manager. I know that if I can't price a risk, I can't participate in the sector. So you pull back and tell yourself, I never want to ask how exposed is that home. I simply want to just write homes that are not exposed. Okay, great. So you buy a risk model and you limit the amount, the risk level to 0, 1, whatever, 2, very low level. So you understand that you're just writing normal, regular homeowners. What's happening is you're having a lot of business come through your doors that you're just declining. And there's a lot of customers that are showing up to your agent saying, hi, agent, I have a home in LA. I have a home out in the woods. I have 3 cars. I have an umbrella policy. And I got this little tiny boat that I use on the weekends. It's wonderful. I'd like to insure all of these things through you. And your agent has to say, excellent. I'll offer you policies for all of them, except your house in the woods. I don't have a solution for you. Maybe you can try somewhere else. That insured is going to go down the block to your competitor, and the competitor will say, you know what? I will write your house in the woods. And you already got quotes on the rest of it, but just bring them all over. Bring your house in LA, bring your 3 cars, bring your umbrella policy. We'll take the boat as well. It'll be all under one roof, it'll be bundled, give you bundled discounts. You're gonna lose the client. If you're in a situation where you partner with a group that writes wildfire, your agent can now say, I'll offer you a policy for all of these. Sure, it's a partner policy for your home in the woods, but I'll offer you a policy. It's all under one roof. You all get bundled discounts. Everything will be great. So stay here. That allows you as the carrier to grow your market share, or at least not shrink. You can grow in auto because you can grow in areas that you're not currently selling, and you can keep your home in the middle of cities. It provides a lot of benefit, and of course keeps your agents happy because they can actually say yes instead of no. Let's take the next structure, one step up in terms of involvement. Say you're working with a specialty underwriter that writes in wildfire areas and sells through your agents, you're distributing it. Well, that specialty underwriter, if they're good, they're making a lot of money. So you're sitting there selling somebody else's policies, and that group is making a lot of profit. Well, potentially you want to participate in the profit that's brought by your distribution. Maybe your agents are really good at frontline underwriting, so you want to participate in that. What you can do is you can put up some assumed reinsurance onto the specialty program, so you start getting the agent commission, of course, as you do in the pure distribution setup, but you also get to participate in the underwriting profit that this partner brings. Let's take one step up, again, in terms of level of involvement. We'll say that you were underwriting wildfire before, and kind of wanted to do it. Not really wildfire, but you want to grow your footprint into areas that are safe. And it's something that could be a part of your business plan. Well, in that case, what you can do is you can actually put that specialty underwriter on your paper. Still farm out some of the reinsurance, protect yourself, especially from a PML perspective, but put that on your paper. Basically, the specialty underwriter becomes a program administrator, effectively underwriting on a per risk basis and on a portfolio basis that specific sector for which they are experts, growing that partnership with them. There's also benefits on a regulatory side. Obviously, there's been a lot of, I don't want to say noise, I want to say news about the fact that there may be some regulatory changes in California where the Department of Insurance says if you want to participate in getting reinsurance rates in your rates, then you have to write in wildfire areas. Well, in this situation, you are writing in wildfire areas. Well, a program that you're writing through, a specialist underwriter, program administrator for your paper is selling in wildfire areas, but it's your product, it's your license, and that allows you to get the regulatory benefit of that and keep it profitable. Also allows you tighter control. Say you are putting up assumed reinsurance, but you're a little bit worried about concentration, you're worried about over-aggregation with your current portfolio. Well, if it's on your paper, you can implement tighter control on the specialty underwriter. You can say, hey, you are going to be held to my corporate aggregation and concentration. So when we hit a cap in a certain location, I unfortunately am going to cap you out. I write a lot in LA. You're writing a lot in the hills above LA. We got too much in that one area. You can't write anymore. Adding in external reinsurance, of course, you give up some of the underwriting profit, but you control yourself, control your PML. So I'm sure everybody's going to guess what the next step up is. It's full program capacity and paper. In this situation, the specialty underwriter truly is a program administrator for you. Remember that this is different than just using a third-party data source because this group is leveraging their unique expertise or unique data, their high-level specialty understanding of the peril into per-risk underwriting and portfolio-level underwriting. That's not something that you can do through external data feeds. It's also something that you want the experts focusing on every single day, to be the ones that are making these decisions. So you get to participate in the profitability associated with it. You give up some commission, but you get to decide, is the profitability, is the loss ratio decrease making up for the commission that I give up? And of course, you're only going to say, yes, let's do it in a situation where that's true. And of course, this enables full control over how the underwriter is going to be constructing their portfolio, how they're going to be writing. And again, of course, in-house, right? I don't know how the relationship between Corvus and Travelers will work out, but it's one example of you can acquire a specialist and use that in-house. You can create one in-house and really be focused on a specific sector, but you have specialists there controlling that portfolio. Okay, so that sort of concludes that portion of the discussion about ways in which a traditional carrier can work with a specialist to be able to increase profitability, market share, and all of that. A quick note that I want to mention to the specialty underwriters that are in the audience, or for those of you that are looking at creating an in-house specialty underwriter, what you really want to do, what we've benefited from at Delos, is really staying focused on differentiation. Because there's a lot of things you can do with that differentiation. Obviously, you can have better loss ratios. You can have better PML results because you understand how to diversify a program more effectively. The peril's changing very rapidly, so you got to stay focused on understanding what is new with the behavior of, for us, wildfire, whatever peril that you're focused on. And there's a lot of different partners that you can onboard to be able to address many different sectors across the industry, across the market. You can also focus on differentiated marketing. You know the specific profitable subsegment, and others don't. So you can leverage that data into finding that profitable business. What you shouldn't be spending your time on, or else what we did not want to spend our time on, is something that has been effectively done by proven organizations already. Therefore, we look to offload our IT infrastructure. We were looking for a group that has a stable database of records, something that we don't have to worry about, that regulatory side, the data security side, somebody that can build programs, products very quickly because we onboard many different programs from many different carriers. That is flexible at being able to bring on new data sources. Certain programs we have, certain carriers we work with, reinsurers we work with say, hey, I'd like you to use this data source. Well, we got to pick that up and implement it quickly. And most importantly, I was looking for a partner that was going to invite me to speak at their conferences. So I found that one. But Insurance Now has been a very good partner for that. One thing I really will mention that made a big difference for us, there's a lot of different players in the policy administration system space. A lot of newer players, a lot of newer entrants, some interesting technology. What we were able to do with Insurance Now is come up with a very specific budget and fundraise for that budget, and then implement a timeline and tell our partners, hey, we're going to launch at this specific time. And they came in very, very close on budget and very, very close to the planned schedule. And that has been very effective for us. It just helped in corporate planning. We also had very good system administrators with ExaValue helping us out with that. That's all that I wanted to talk about today, discussing how we need to look at niche risks as an industry. And open it up to questions.
If you have to go over your journey once more, what would you do what you did versus what would you do differently?
That is a great question. I think one of the interesting aspects of insurance is that, as an industry, is that there is a very tight community. Generally, when you're looking at specific risks that have not been underwritten that successfully, you have a lot of outsiders coming in. thinking about things differently and being able to be successful because they think about things differently, right? I'm an aerospace engineer by training. And of course, like every aerospace engineer in grad school, I was dreaming of selling insurance. So my dreams came true, which is great. But getting into the insurance industry, with the professors on our team, we created wildfire models that were significantly more accurate than the rest of the industry. And I thought, okay, great, now we'll be successful. Turns out those relationships are critical. So being able to get people on our team that had that sort of deep level relationships with the reinsurance companies across the world, that would have expedited our growth pretty quickly. Yeah, very good question. On the other side of that same coin, I would encourage all reinsurance companies to recognize that there may be outsiders coming into the insurance industry these days, and that's really healthy. They're not competitive. They're just trying to understand risks that are much more difficult to understand, that maybe haven't been underwritten profitably before. And now we have an opportunity as an industry to be able to do that. But in order to incorporate that in the industry as a whole, we have to be open to discussing that sort of thing with outsiders. I was going to give you the microphone.
You talked about staying focused, and your focus right now is on California, the wildfire risks. But is it something you also talked about other catastrophe and other models? How challenging would it be, or is it advisable for you to branch out into others, or was that something you would consider, like hurricane or flood?
Yeah, that's a great question. So our model is we've innovated a new type of AI. It's AI applied to geospatial data. We have a patent on it, actually. It allows an algorithm to innately sort of understand different drivers of wildfire in different areas. Certain areas are wind-driven, certain areas are moisture-driven, certain areas vegetation-driven. Our algorithm understands that. It also allows us to ingest far larger amounts of information. So we have 200 data layers that go into our model. Many of those data layers are actually sub-tier models. For example, we have our own fire climate model going back 11 years with hour-by-hour data. We then take that model, through which we've been able to understand sort of where can wind-driven fires happen, where can they not happen. We then modify by different climate projections, looking at 1 year, 5 year, 10 years, and more. We have a downscaled wind model. Ours is 10-foot resolution. The publicly accessible is 7.5 square kilometer resolution. We have a 3-dimensional vegetation model that looks at cross sections 1 foot, 5 feet below the surface of the earth, all the way up through the canopy. To understand underbrush conditions and low-level vegetation health conditions, all this sort of stuff. It's been extremely accurate for wildfire. Our model is mostly a wind and weather focused model, not because we wanted it to be, but because we found the primary indicator of loss is wind and weather for wildfire. All the other models in the industry right now are vegetation-based almost exclusively. They add some buffer on top for weather, but it's very difficult to understand sort of climate conditions and how that impacts the spread of fire. Because of that, our algorithm is actually set up very well for hurricane. It is not set up well for flood or earthquake, so we will never go into flood or earthquake. Right now, though, we're staying focused. We're trying to get our fully set up and in all different states across the West, all different lines of business, commercial property, high value home, regular value home, all that sort of stuff before we move into hurricane.
I know you were going to wrap it up, but I just want to thank all of our Insurance Now customers. I know not all of you are Insurance Now customers, but I also do want to thank Kevin from Delos for doing this for us. We've been talking about doing this session for about a year. Felt that there could be a lot of huge value for our customers, and for those of you who are watching online, hopefully you're getting a tremendous amount of value out of this. Thank you for attending Connections, and we look forward to seeing you at Wild Horse Saloon.
Yeehaw!
All right, thank you very much, guys.